your socks! Hey!
The Lost Art with Andrew Cox podcast, now streaming on all major podcast platforms. A Till Valhalla Project ambassador. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast that's given a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're having a My Veteran Story with Ken McQuiston. But before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? And make sure you go to the website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check us out. See what we're all about. If there's any way you can help support us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear, please do so. Also, a big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project out there doing amazing things. If you don't know anything about that great organization, go to their website. That's tillvalhallaproject.com. And for all the Marines out there that are veterans, you know, there's a great organization out there for you. You can get that camaraderie back. It's the Marine Corps League. That's right, the Marine Corps League. I encourage you, go join the Marine Corps League. There's plenty of chapters around the United States. So go back, get with your fellow Marines, and have some good times. And you can go to mcleague.org to check that organization out. Same team, new mission. The Marine Corps League. A legacy of valor. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Is familiar to us all. It is that feeling you get when you see a Marine Corps sticker on a car or home proudly displaying the Marine Corps flag. We know we can knock on the door and that Marine will be there for us. Despite our many years of service to different causes, we all have that common bond. We have all earned the privilege to wear the eagle, globe, and anchor. The Marine Corps League is the only congressionally chartered Marine Corps veteran service organization, with detachments in 1,150 communities across the U.S. Please take a few minutes to check it out. Visit today at mcleague.org or email tribe@mcleague.org. All right, with that, I got Ken. Ken, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Andrew. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing good. You were saying earlier it's a very cold morning up in St. Louis.
Yes, it's a brisk 14 degrees with a -3 wind chill, even though the sun is shining. But to be honest, I don't plan on going anywhere today simply because there are a couple of football games on today.
That's true. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
a
yeah.
big Philadelphia Eagles fan, so
Oh,
we'll
okay.
see what happens today. But
That's right.
yeah, we're excited.
Okay, yeah, I like it. Very cool. Well, hey, just like with everybody, let's kind of go back to the beginning, where you grew up, and then kind of what drew you into the military.
Sure. Well, first, thanks everybody for joining. I like to say that I came from humble beginnings, and that is truly an understatement. Born and raised in South Philadelphia. My father was a Navy veteran who met his wife, my mother, when he was stationed in Connecticut. And the interesting part was my my parents knew each other for 2 weeks, and they got married.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the reason they got married was not because of anything nefarious. It was because back then, if you were in the Navy and you wanted to have a car, you had to be married.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
my
yeah.
so my dad made a deal with my mom. He said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to go out to sea. I want to buy this car. So how about if we get married? While I'm out at sea, you can have the car and drive it. And when I get back, you give me the car. We'll get divorced and go on our way." And my mom said, "Sure." My dad went out to sea. They never got the car, and they were married for nearly 60 years before my mom
Holy
passed
cow.
away.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. And to this
Holy
day,
cow.
my father is he's 88 years old, lives in southern New Jersey on Cape May, right near the Coast Guard station. And
Nice.
there's not a day that goes by where he doesn't pop his "I'm a tin can sailor" hat on before he goes outside. He was a very proud destroyer guy. And
Yeah.
yeah, not a day goes by where he doesn't show his pride for his service in the Navy. So
That is
it's
awesome.
all good. Yeah.
And how many years did he end up doing?
He did 4.
4? Okay.
Yeah, my mom had some health issues, so he couldn't continue his service, but I know that he
Right.
wanted to continue, just wound up that way. They
Right.
then migrated back to Philadelphia. My older brother came around, and then I came around. I had a younger sister, and they my dad was actually an engineer at Boeing in the helicopter division for about 30 years. And then when he
Wow.
retired, they moved to southern New Jersey, lived on a beach resort area near the beach. And to this day, that's where my dad still lives.
Holy cow. Man, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it
Wow.
is. We lived in a suburb of Philly. Uh,
Hmm.
Most people know it as Delco. It's Delaware County. It is
Okay.
about a 2 miles as the bird flies from the Philadelphia International Airport. And what
Okay.
was interesting as a young kid, we lived in a row house neighborhood, almost like what
Mm,
you see in the Rocky movies. These
right.
long streets of houses all connected. And we were fortunate enough to live in an end house.
Okay.
And I would sit in my bedroom at night and look out the window, and I could watch airplanes land and take off, and always wondered where they were going, and were
Hmm.
people looking at me while I was looking at them, and kind of interesting things. So that started my journey of wanting to see what else was out there in the world, because
Right.
we didn't have a whole lot of money,
Hmm.
so it wasn't like we went on extravagant vacations and things like that.
Right.
So yeah, so I got to high school, football player, a wrestler, and all this stuff. I like to tell folks that I majored in wrestling and football, and that's why I had a GPA so low that I would never get to college. In that way. Uh, so my mother would say she couldn't understand why everybody in our family were involved in music and bands and stuff like that. That I
Yeah.
was the only athlete. And she said that I only involve myself in sports that involve some sort of bleeding or emergency room visits,
I
which was
like it.
true,
Yeah.
which was true. So, so after that, I had a really exciting job after high school. I was putting tombstones in cemeteries.
Oh, wow.
Me and one of my high school buddies, best friend, and we like to say that we had a great job because we never once got a customer complaint.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
that line of work, there's nobody going to complain. So
That's a good
one day
point.
while we sat in the truck, he talked about he wanted to go into the Marine Corps
Okay.
and asked me, what I thought. I said, you know what, that sounds pretty cool, man. Let's go explore that. So we did, went to the recruiter several times. And then we went down to enlist. And my buddy George raised his right hand, swore in he was going to go in the reserves. I was going to go active duty. He swore in, shook hands, and all that biz. They got to me. I raised my hand. And I said, I changed my mind. And and I went down the hallway and saw an Air Force recruiter. And for some reason, we connected. And I wanted to go to the Air Force. I'm going on active duty. I
Very nice.
told my recruiter I wanted to see the world.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, you're going to get that opportunity. This is going to be awesome." So sure enough, here I am from Philadelphia, and my first base out of basic training was McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey, which was 52 miles from my parents' house.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're seeing the world all right.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting because my when I told my parents I was going to join the Air Force, they kind of laughed at me and said they're not going to take you. I had a hearing issue in one of my ears, and my dad said they're never going to take you because you're hearing. My mom said the same thing. They're never going to take you.
Yeah.
So I went down and went to the MEP station, did my hearing test, and lo and behold, you put 50 guys in a room, you get a button in your left hand, a button in your right hand,
Yeah.
and if you all push the button at the same time, you're going to have kind of the same result.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sure enough, I made it to basic training, and my parents never thought that would happen. But as luck would have it, 2/3 of the way through basic training, sure enough, they caught me, so to speak, called me in and said, "Hey, we noticed you got a little bit of a hearing issue." And they took my hearing test and they said, "How did you get this far?" And I told them, and they said, "Okay, well, we're going to give you a choice. You can either stay, and finish out. You're almost done, but you're
Hmm.
never going to deploy anywhere. You're going to be, on the base." And I said, "Okay, I can live with that." Because I wanted to use the GI Bill so I could go to college
Oh,
because I
right. Yeah.
couldn't afford it.
Hmm.
So sure enough, like 7 or 8 deployments later, my wife kindly mentioned to me one day. She said, "Hey, didn't you tell me they said you'd never be able to deploy?" And I said, "Yeah, I do remember that." But I came on active duty, was stationed at McGuire for a while, and then got an assignment to Izmir Air Station in Turkey.
Oh, wow.
And and what was neat about that was it was downtown. So I was like right in the city, and take a guy who had been used to living in the dorm and, 3 hots and a cot, so to speak,
Right.
go to the
Yeah.
gym and, everything's right on the base, to having to find an apartment, roommates and stuff like that. So
Wow.
I found these 2 roommates, and we got an apartment downtown Turkey, and I was the gym rat and they were 2 bookworms. These 2 dudes would go to the library just about every day. And
Oh, wow.
one day they came back from the library and said, "Hey man, you got to go to the library. They got this gal that works there. Man, she is the living end. You got to go check her out." So I did. I went to the library and I checked out this gal. And as the story goes, I checked her out and I never checked her back in. And we've been married for 38 years. We have 4 kids.
Wow.
We've got 5 grandkids, and about 90% of my military career that she's been my harshest critic, my biggest supporter, and my true battle buddy
Wow. Yeah.
through that
As it should be.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
good
it
for you
was,
to be able to stick it out. There's so many guys out there that are not unable to make that happen, especially in the military. It's it's tough sometimes, but good for you to be that example, you know?
well, the interesting thing you say about that, I hear that quite a bit. Wow, you're able to stay in that long. You know, my first 4 years was that forcing function of trying to qualify for the GI Bill kind of thing.
Right.
And then I was on an extension when I went to Turkey, and then when Mary and I got married, we had, our first born son 9 months later. 9 months
Mm.
and one day after we were
Oh,
married, our
wow.
son Kyle was born, and then 14 months later, we had a set of twins. And for me to say that the first and foremost reason for staying in was, God and country and defending freedom, I'd be lying. The forcing
Hmm.
function was more economic and,
Right.
socioeconomic stuff. But the interesting thing, and I think a lot of veterans would be able to say this, is that my time in a service was more about the relationships and the experiences I got to share with people from all over the world, all different walks of life, than I ever would have had I stayed in Philadelphia and, and, just stayed in the
Very true.
local area. The
Yeah.
friends that I have now, like you and I, spending a
Hmm.
year together, this would have never happened had
True.
I, not taken that chance and rolled the dice and tried to go on active duty. So
Yeah.
it's molded and shaped me into the man that I am, to be quite honest. And I have a son who is a soft guy on active duty.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
He's been on active duty for 18 years, and
Wow.
he is on his right now as we speak. I think he's on his 15th deployment. Yeah, and he loves what he does.
Yeah.
He'd gotten banged up several years ago, but was able to recover and get back into the business. And he loves what he does and the people that he does it with. So it's like a
Yeah.
brotherhood.
Wow. Good for him. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
You know,
it's kind of cool.
yeah. And there has to be those guys that go out there and kick down the door and kick ass, take names. So that's good.
Well, it's the other part too is I was I was blessed, and I mean truly blessed. I made E9 relatively quickly and got into the business that the Air Force calls a command chief, which would be
Hmm.
like a sergeant major or a command sergeant major, command
Right.
master chief. And then not too long after that, after a tour in Afghanistan, and I started running into these guys in places like Iraq and Afghanistan.
Hmm.
Mark Ripka, I ran into him in Qatar the first time, but then ran into him in a bunch of other places. The former Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, Carlton Kent,
Hmm.
he and I ran into each other while he was in Fallujah, and
Oh, wow.
he needed a ride for his soldiers or his Marines, and I was in the transportation biz. So,
Yeah.
but and this was before he was a Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps,
Right.
and knowing guys like Brian Battaglia
Hmm.
before he was the SEAC,
Right.
and and then being able to kind of be raised not only within my core service in the Air Force, but having
Hmm.
the opportunity to experience the culture and lifestyle of soldiers, of Marines,
Hmm.
of sailors, uh, it just made my career so full that I owe those guys and gals so much more than I ever gave to them. I
Yeah.
mean, to this day, I connect with Brian pretty often. Of course, he's the one who connected us with you,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
he's a phenomenal man, phenomenal
Hmm.
human being. Tommy Smith, who you're going to have later on, former SOCOM senior enlisted leader, guys, he's fascinating. The things that
Yeah.
man has done, and just having that experience has helped me to become a better husband, a
Hmm.
better father, a better grandfather, a better teammate, a better coworker, because I've been able to learn so much from people like that.
Yeah.
That when I talk to a young man or woman about them wanting to go into the military,
Hmm.
that that's that's what I tell them is the true value of it. It's the experience and
Yeah.
the relationships. It's not about your MOS or things like that.
Very
So
true.
now,
Yeah.
granted, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna you know complain about my retired pay or my VA or anything like that. I'm very
Yeah.
thankful for that. But when people ask me about things like the VA and retirement pay, I'll ask them, how many months have you spent away from your family in your
Yeah.
lifetime? How many times in the middle of the night did you have to get up and go? Sometimes not even
Absolutely.
knowing where you're going.
Hmm.
And how many times did you have to spend months on end missing family events, missing,
Hmm.
important events? Now, granted, that's not to disparage anybody who has not served in military, but at the same time, there are things that we as Americans are allowed to do because of
Very
folks who
true.
have worn the uniform.
Very true. Yeah.
Whether it was 4 years or 40 years, there's no difference in the reverence that those folks that have served deserve.
Yeah. Absolutely. Man. So when you were in Turkey, what was your job specifically while you were there?
Believe it or not, I had a really cool job. I was an admin guy. All right.
Okay.
Again, I'm like a Radar O'Reilly for those MASH fans out there. Uh, and now, granted, I wasn't as good as Radar was, but I was part of a security forces unit that provided security for all of the U.S. installations in the city.
Uh-huh.
But what I found out shortly after getting there was, okay, you might be the admin guy, but when we need extra folks to go out and do this stuff, you're going to do it with us.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
so I had the opportunity to do that. So that was my role in Turkey. Then when
Hmm.
I came back to the States after that assignment, I got stationed at Dover in Delaware,
Okay.
43 miles south of my parents' house, by the way.
Getting closer. Getting
Yeah.
closer.
Yeah. And then spent time in the 436th Military Airlift Wing, which were home of the C-5 Galaxy,
Oh,
the
wow.
huge, huge cargo plane.
Yeah.
And I spent several years there, and then I got my first headquarters job here at Scott Air Force Base as a young E6. And I was
Okay.
here. I was here at Scott from '93 till 2000 when I made E9. And then
Wow.
after and then then after I made E9, all bets are off. You know,
Yeah.
I had an assignment to Germany. I spent 4 years in Germany, and I became the command chief for the 52nd Fighter Wing in
Okay.
Germany, which hosted F-16s and A-10s
Oh,
fighters.
wow. Yeah.
And this is kind of ironic. Here I am, an 18-year E9 command chief, had one of the lead fighter wings in all of Europe. And 6 days after I became the command chief, 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow.
So I went from being like the rookie command chief to standing in the parking lot with my boss right after the second plane hit the World Trade Center. And he says,
Right.
Chief, it's time for us to prepare the wing for war. He knew it. He
Yeah.
knew it right away. So sure enough, in the matter of months, both he and I were deployed. I wound up being the command chief at this dirt stretch of runway in the middle of Afghanistan called Bagram Airfield,
Mm.
which, as you
Yeah.
well know, became the monstrosity that it was, larger than many U.S. military bases.
Oh, yeah.
And I was there when we were living in tents, using the civil engineers' showers when we could get them,
Yeah.
and working out of a bombed out control tower that the
Wow.
soft guys were hunkered down in the original taking of the
Yeah.
airfield.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so that was quite an experience, and that's where I realized. Well, it was before that, but it was truly, being an E9 and the first time I was in a combat environment
Mm-hmm.
that I realized the true value of sacrifice,
Mm.
the true value of what people are willing to give in defense of not only our country but our partners and our allies,
Yeah.
as well as each other.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cared what service you were in. Nobody cared what your rank was or how you got there.
Right.
When you're in a fight, it's all about the fight,
That's right.
just
Yeah.
just the fight, and I took away from that probably my greatest experiences as a member of the military was being in that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely eye-opening and it changes your thought or your perspective on things pretty dramatically. Or at least
It
it did for
does.
me. Yeah.
It does. And you know, it's an experience. I still remember the sheer fear and terror when I was coming off the back of a C-130 at 2 a.m. in total darkness, being
Right.
led on an airfield that had blackout conditions. So everybody was using night vision goggles at night. But ours weren't unpacked yet because we were just getting the
All right.
airfield. And you're basically going out of the back of a C-130 that's doing an ERO or an engine running offload. And you're
Right.
walking out the back into total darkness, not knowing anything that's in front of you. And you're following a glow stick.
Oh man.
And the
Yeah.
glow stick is being held by an E3 airman, aerial port person
Mm-hmm.
that now has the lives of 50 plus people getting off of an airplane in a combat zone, all carrying weapons that are loaded
Mm-hmm.
and ready to go. And she was the one that served. And I told her this: you were my first leader in Afghanistan.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And she
That's
said, what are you
good.
talking about? And I said, you were my first leader. If I did not follow you, I would have been in a very bad place.
Man, that's good. I like
Yeah.
that.
And,
So true though.
leadership, yeah. And it gave so many people an opportunity to grow and lead in an
Mm-hmm.
environment for which they probably never in a million years thought that they would be in.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
From the
sure.
most junior enlisted person to, the most senior decorated person.
Right.
And it was kind of cool that our commanding general was just Friday, our commanding general from Afghanistan walked out of the Pentagon for the last time. And it was
Oh
General
wow.
Austin. General Austin, our
No
Secretary of
kidding.
Defense. He was our
Wow.
he was our 2-star commanding general in Afghanistan when I was
How
serving there.
wild. Yeah.
Yes.
Man, did he have a career, huh?
I want to tell you
Man,
what, I don't know if you ever had a chance to be around him or see him,
no.
but the first time I met him, they took me into his office, as the brand new, command chief, and you go in to
Hmm.
meet the CG. And this man stood up behind his desk and literally scared the bejesus out of me. If he's not 6'6", and I later found out that he was a West Point football player and all that biz. But you
Oh,
talk
okay.
about a huge, empowering, figure who had the voice to go with it.
Hmm.
Uh, it was just so imposing. But then to find out just how much he cared for and loved the enlisted corps. And now,
Hmm.
granted, he loved and cared for everyone, but he had a special place in his heart for the enlisted corps. And even up to his last time he was here at Scott, which was several months ago, I got to go up and shake his hand. Now, granted, I've got this little beard, nothing as glorious as what you have, trust me. And I went up and I said, General Austin, you probably don't remember me. He says, "Hey, Chief Mack, how are you?" He
Oh, wow.
he, and I was just so taken by that. For that man, the people he's with, the circles he travels, to be able to
Yeah.
say that was just, again, mind-boggling.
Yeah. You know what? General officers, I don't know how they do it, but they have an incredible memory. I mean, it is amazing to see them work and do what they do. I know for me, I can barely remember what I did yesterday half the time. So
You and me
it
both.
amazes me. I don't know. I'll forget
Well,
people's names like it's cool and like all the time.
well, it's funny you say that. Brian, Brian and the former senior enlisted leaders last summer had a reunion in Florida. We went
Hmm.
down to spend some time with General Gary Luck, Army
Okay.
four-star, who sadly passed away several months ago due to some health issues. But we were
Hmm.
able to go down and visit General Luck, and all of us senior enlisted leaders were able to be there. And the interesting part was we were there talking to General Luck, and then the phone rang, and then the phone started to get passed around to all the guys, all the senior enlisted leaders. Well, here, the person on the phone was General Mattis,
Oh, no
former
kidding.
former
Yeah.
Secretary of Defense. And when I got on the phone with General Mattis, he did the same thing. "Hey, Mac, I hadn't seen you in a while. How you been, man? You still working with Nordy Schwartz? All this stuff about who my four
Wow.
star was and all that."
Yeah.
So you're right. I've been blessed to work with some phenomenal uh, senior enlisted leaders, but
Hmm.
equally impressive general officers. You
Right. Yeah.
know, it starts with a guy named Bill Welser. I would have never
Mm.
been a chief if it wasn't for Bill Welser. Greg Idy was the first guy that selected me to be a command chief. Uh, General Nordy Schwartz, who was the commander in U.S. Transcom, that became the chief of staff of the Air Force when
Right.
he selected me to be in Transcom. I mean, these are guys that if they would call me right now and say, "Ken, I need somebody to dig a hole in my backyard and fill it with dog shit or whatever," you know what? I tell my wife I got to go to the airport. I got to fly
Yeah.
to clean up so and so's yard. But they were just those kind of people that not only you made a great point about their memories,
Hmm.
but I will tell you, a lot of times they don't get the credit for the stress and the
Oh my
decisions that they
God.
have to make.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I remember being in a room with with General Schwartz when he was talking to then the SecDef at the time, and it was about moving uh, up armor. Do you remember what up armor is?
Hmm.
It's what we put on
Yeah.
Humvees to
That's
stop
right.
people
Yeah.
from before we had the MRAPs. Well, here General Schwartz came up with this idea one of the teammates came up with this idea to move up armor on Navy ships instead of putting them
Mm.
on airplanes. And his explanation to the SecDef was they're so heavy that you can't carry that much of it even on a huge transport. So we're spending literally millions and millions of dollars,
Right.
like $7 or $8 a pound but we can do it for about 15 cents a pound if we take it by ship, and then
Mm-hmm.
transloading it and flying it a much shorter distance. And I remember the
Wow.
SecDef saying, if this doesn't work, it's your job and your career.
Ooh.
And he said, I'm good. I trust my people. Now, granted, that comment didn't go anywhere. He never told a whole group of people that, but
Right.
I'm sitting in the office listening to him, knowing that he had such great confidence
Mm-hmm.
in the team that he was
Right.
willing to put his career on the line to do that.
That's amazing.
That's crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's another guy. If he called me up right now and said, you know what, Ken, I need somebody to come over and cut my grass. I'll be right there, boss.
I love it. Oh man. Oh. Well, let's see. Now, when you say command, what do you call it? Master
Command.
Chief?
It's just command chief. Command.
Command
The
Chief.
the Air Force calls it a command chief master sergeant.
Command Chief Master Sergeant. Okay.
Yeah,
Now that is the equivalent of our major, like a general who works for the general officer. Is that correct?
that is correct. It is
Okay.
like the Army's command sergeant major,
Mm-hmm.
the Marine Corps sergeant major or master
Yeah.
gunnery sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
The Air Force calls it a command chief.
Got it.
But then when you get into the joint world, where like Brian and I and others
Mm-hmm.
and Tommy, uh, to put some commonality between all of them, because we were
Right.
all different services, that we started to use the phrase senior enlisted leader.
Right. Yeah.
So we knew who the SELs were within each of
Mm-hmm.
the respective COCOMs.
Okay, that makes sense. Now,
Yeah.
and how many different like when you're going into those roles, what preparation, I guess, did you get going into them?
So when you are, at least my Air Force experience, when you are selected for Chief Master Sergeant, they have what they refer to as a Chief Master Sergeant orientation course. And it's a week or week and a half long course where, we used to play around and call it charm school. They teach you what it's like to interact and all this other business. Because I will tell you, this was an interesting dynamic. It was explained to me once, actually by a 4-star general. He said, I want to let you know what the relationship is between the officer corps and the enlisted corps.
Hmm.
You can go from E1 to E8, and everybody's pretty much grouped. You're separated by, grade, maybe tenure.
Right.
He said, but the difference between an E8 and an E9 is much bigger,
Hmm.
because now you're part of the decision-making process.
Right.
You are part of developing policy. You are part of, that deep in the weeds stuff that when you were an
Hmm.
E8, you never did.
Right.
And so, and when he said, I'll give you the same relationship in the general officer world. He said, from a 1-star to a 3-star, we're all kind of grouped. He said, but when it comes to being selected to be a 4-star, there's a huge difference in it simply because of the process they go through to be selected.
Wow.
So when you enter the senior enlisted leader world, or the command
Hmm.
chief or command sergeant major world, each of the respective services have an additional school that provides you with that education and feedback. For example, there's a 2-week long course at Harvard
Hmm.
on dynamic leadership, and
Wow.
then they have, which we were fortunate enough to work on during my time as a senior enlisted leader. We developed a course called Keystone, and
Hmm.
Keystone was a joint senior enlisted leader course
Okay.
that you would spend several weeks together, and you would travel to different combatant commands. You would
Oh
travel to
wow.
different agencies. You'd visit places like the CIA and the FBI, and
Right.
you'd go to Gitmo, you go to Guantanamo Bay.
Hmm.
You get to go to do these different things to give you a full-fledged picture of what it's like to be I don't want to say a regular E9 or a regular chief, but an executive level senior enlisted leader.
Right.
And it's the same, the Keystone course is the equivalent to what the general officers have is called capstone,
Mm-hmm.
where once they're selected, they have to go through this course. So
Right.
initially, there was not a whole lot of education that went on when you got into those roles. You kind of just had to figure it out. But
Mm-hmm.
because of guys like Mark Ripka, Mike Balch, Mark Ripka was a Forces Command Command
Right.
Sergeant Major. Mike Balch was a UCOM and a Southcom guy. Tommy Smith and SOCOM. Brian was Forces Command, and then of course SEAC, myself and Transcom, and so many others
Mm-hmm.
that we were told, hey, if we want to help the next group of people to better
Mm-hmm.
fill these roles, we need to develop a process to help them do that.
Right.
And now it's very mature. It's been around for probably 16 or 17 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was, matter of fact, myself, Tom Smith, Mike Balch, we were all first class guys. We were
Oh,
in the
wow.
first class. It was funny. We were in the job, but we were in the class at the same time. So that was kind of neat because we shared the responsibilities of not only learning some of the stuff we didn't know,
Yeah.
but taking some of that time to share what we did know with those who had not been there before.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Now, what would you say the biggest differences are when you go into the joint environment? Kind of what do you see as those differences?
So the biggest difference for me, and I've shared this, is culture,
Mm,
service culture. You
yeah.
know, Marines, as you very well know, Marines think differently than soldiers.
Yeah, it's
Soldiers
true.
think differently than sailors.
Hmm.
Sailors think differently than airmen. And trying to find the correlation and the relationships that will bring those cultures closer together
Hmm.
was what my biggest challenge.
Right.
For example, I was an Air Force guy. I I could tell you Air Force inside and out. You know,
Hmm.
it, it, and I'm just being a smart ass, but you couldn't teach me anything about the Air Force as a senior enlisted leader. I knew it,
Right.
but you know what? I had a sergeant first class Army soldier that
Hmm.
was my assistant, and I
Okay.
tried to write her performance report at the end of the year, and I wrote it in the mindset of an airman.
Mm,
And I wrote this thing, and one day I get a phone call from Ken Preston. I don't know
hmm.
if you know Ken Preston, but
I
Ken
don't know.
Preston was the former sergeant major of the Army.
Oh, okay.
And he calls me up and he says, hey, man, I got a phone call from this guy who got a phone call from this guy that said you put this in a performance report. I said, are you joking with me? And he said, no. He said, did you do it? I said, yeah. He said, I think I took care of her. He says, no, you're hurting her. I said, what? He said, in an Army mindset, there's always room for improvement. We have to identify the areas for which they can improve to help them advance to the next level. It's part of our career development track within
Okay.
the Army. And
Yeah.
that was totally different than the culture that I was in.
Hmm.
So that single issue caused me to reach out to each of the service senior enlisted leaders, Sergeant
Right.
Major of the Army, Master Chief of the Navy, Master Chief of the Coast Guard, Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. And
Hmm.
I said, what can you guys do to help me help the soldiers, sailors, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen in Transcom to make sure that we're doing right by them?
Right.
And what I wound up doing was a visit to each of the respective service headquarters where
Hmm.
their A1s or N1s, their personnel type folks,
Right.
walked me through their processes.
Oh,
And
nice.
then, it got it weirder. Uh, the Master Chief of the Navy, uh, Joe Campa, called me up and says, "Hey, man, I want to take you on a trip. Why don't you fly into Norfolk and you and I will spend 4 days together and we'll do all things Navy?" Said, that's cool. So I
Yeah.
flew into Norfolk, and the next morning I go into Norfolk, and I meet him where I'm supposed to meet him, and here's a cod out there, a 2-engine prop plane. He said,
Yeah.
"Okay, grab your shit. We're getting on an airplane. Let's go." Well, here they flew me out to the Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier that was underway in the Atlantic.
Yeah.
We landed on the deck of the carrier and spent 4 days on an aircraft carrier
Wow.
where I ate the Chiefs mess. I
Yeah.
was all over the flight deck. I was, watching takeoff and landings, doing all this stuff. And I'll tell you what, I never knew just the enormity of something like what an aircraft carrier does.
Right.
And here I am, an Air Force enlisted guy roaming around on this ship. It was phenomenal. But I was
Hmm.
given that opportunity with each of the services, but the camaraderie that we had
Hmm.
with that group of senior enlisted leaders uh, helped us to lay the groundwork for what the services do every day now within the COCOMs.
Right.
They have deliberate professional military education to teach joint
Hmm.
enlisted leaders or joint officers uh, to not only grow and develop, but to leverage what they're learning in a combatant command role.
Hmm.
Because what you want them to do is not only do a great job while they're in that COCOM, but you
Right.
want them to go back to their service and
Hmm.
say, I just spent 4 years. You know what? The Air Force is not a bunch of guys and gals that stay at the Hilton, and get fancy rental cars. They're
Yeah.
doing this, 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 and this. And the same thing with the Navy. Hey, this is not all about, going out on a ship and just eating all day, every day. They're doing this, this, and this. And we were able to build up a pretty healthy relationship, uh, not only with the services, but with the folks that we brought into the commands to try to
Hmm.
expand their knowledge about service culture.
Right. Man, that's
And
really
it was
cool.
fun. It was fun, man. I I can't tell you that 4 years of my military career, that being the final 4 years, it was so much fun. I enjoyed every
Wow.
day of it.
So, and that was at Transcom, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So, I'm curious about Transcom itself.
Mhm.
Kind of, could you talk a little bit to that?
Sure. It's interesting. Transcom is to give it the best perspective, is Transcom is responsible for the deployment and utilization of every ship, train, truck, and plane within the Department of Defense.
Wow.
So
Okay.
any any gray cargo moving ship,
Hmm.
Transcom is involved. Transcom has three major components. Their air component is Air Mobility Command, tankers,
Okay.
flying tankers, cargo lift.
Hmm.
Military Sea Lift Command, the Navy
Hmm.
element, which is all the gray hulled large cargo ships that move
Right.
stuff all over the world. And then the Army's Surface Deployment and Distribution Command. They primarily focus on rail, trucking,
Okay.
and all of that. So each of those respective services have a portion of the transportation mission that they're responsible for, but
Right.
Transcom is the coordinator of it.
Okay. Makes sense.
So they're also the coordinator of what they refer to as CRAF, which is a Civil Reserve Air Fleet. So when
Hmm.
we go to war and
Right.
we need to move the 10th Mountain Division from New York to Europe,
Hmm.
uh, commercial carriers like American, Delta,
Right.
Southwest, they provide airplanes for us to move troops. They provide the aircraft, the crew, and everything. We tell them where we need them to go. They take our people there and bring them home. So
Wow.
the military does not have the internal capability of moving everything it needs to move by military means.
Right.
So Transcom has a huge reliance on the commercial industry, whether it's CSX trains,
Hmm.
whether it's FedEx, UPS,
Right.
uh, other big haulers within the United States and internationally.
Right.
So it is. I like to refer to it as the largest transportation company in the world
Wow.
because it got so many elements. And then there's other portions of of Transcom that people are not aware of. So, for example, if a soldier, sailor, airman, marine, coast guardsman, guardian gets banged up in a fight and they need to be medically evacuated,
Hmm.
Transcom does that.
Really?
All of it. Yep.
No kidding.
And also, whenever you see the Secretary of Defense or the President get off of Air
Uh-huh.
Force One,
Right.
Transcom. Transcom is
No
the
kidding.
manager for Air Force One and all that we call it the blue and white fleet.
Yeah.
All those aircraft, all managed through Transcom.
Wow. I had no clue about that.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
talking like the like Marine One and all those as well? It all goes
So,
through there.
yeah. So, Marine One is an attachment. So, Marine One's primarily focuses in the continental United States. The Marine
Okay.
Corps manages that.
Hmm.
If it needs to go overseas, though, Transcom takes their helos.
Oh, I
Uh,
see. Okay.
and then whenever the president flies somewhere, you see the pretty 747 land and take off.
Yeah.
There's usually at least 10 other big airplanes
Hmm.
that are involved in that process. Whether it's
Wow.
taking the president's plane, the president's vehicles,
Oh, yeah.
agents, medical teams, all those other things. They have to have aerial refueling tankers that are in the air in case Air Force One needs them, and they are all part of that infrastructure whenever the president travels anywhere.
Holy cow. I never even thought about that.
Yeah,
But you're right, because
yeah,
anytime the president goes somewhere, he's got to have his own vehicles. He's got to have, I mean, I would imagine that they're not going to trust that to just anybody, you know. So,
no,
to include the personnel, and I've
yeah,
gone places when the president shows up, and man, the amount of personnel that are there beforehand to make sure that everything is perfect and set up and ready to go. That, yeah, I never
yeah,
even thought about that.
yeah. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing to watch. And then they also do a lot of DV lift, like generals flying places, and
Hmm.
service leaders and things like that. They have quite an extensive fleet of DV airplanes, everything from Lear jets that hold like 6 people up to
Yeah.
C-40s that can hold over 100.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
My dog
pretty
is
cool. Yeah, it's all good,
having a
man.
having a fit. I don't know if you can hear him. He's
Yeah, it's
snorting.
good.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
Um. Oh well, I got a question about. Oh man, for air transportation, JOSAC, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was in the band, and we
Oh, there you
used
go.
to we used to all the time, able to call somebody, get a bird, fly someplace, do this, do that, and then all of a sudden JOSAC came around, and it was like, no, you can't get this bird for this, and then, I mean, it was insane the differences that happened whenever JOSAC came around, and I don't really quite understand what JOSAC does.
So JOSAC is the fleet manager for all of the unique travel. Like if a four-star general needs to go somewhere, it's managed. It's JOSAC does all that planning. If the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps needs to fly somewhere,
Hmm.
boom, they manage it. The unique thing about JOSAC is that, and when I say they manage, please know that Transcom does not own all the airplanes. The services own them.
I see. Okay.
Transcom is just the manager of it, basically like your cruise director, your travel planner kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're the ones that prioritize. So JOSAC,
Hmm.
there's a so for example, say there's 2 4 stars, a 3 star, a 1 star, and 2 service senior listed leaders that all need to go somewhere.
Hmm.
All right. So they have to prioritize who gets what with a limited fleet of availability.
Right.
So, so even within the 4 star ranks, so a 4 star combatant commander is going to get an airplane before a 4 star Air Force, let's say, major command commander,
Right.
simply because of their role.
Yeah,
And when it
that makes
gets to the
sense.
3 stars, it's all about priority and what they do.
Hmm.
They basically have a batting order of who ranks who when it comes to getting lift. And the
Right.
reason that JOSAC has to do that because they're used to services when they manage them on their own was very disparate. The Army only had the 2 engine prop. Uh,
Right.
what the heck are they called?
Cessna? No.
Yeah, but they're. Uh, I'm having a brain cramp. But so they could only use those airplanes
Right. So
because that's
very
what they were
limited.
responding.
Yeah.
So when JOSAC took it over, JOSAC could have an Air Force C-21 come and pick up an Army 2-star general and fly them to where they need to go.
Right.
Or it could be an Army C-12. I'm sorry, C-12 is a 2-engine.
Okay.
A C-12 would come in and we could move Air Force guys.
Right.
So what JOSAC does is it gives the opportunity for a more robust fleet
Hmm.
or more robust support with a limited fleet.
Okay.
And so, now granted, there are I know there's been times when people have been pissed because they couldn't get a plane and they had to fly commercial and,
Yeah.
well, hey, I'm so and so. Yeah, but you know what? You're so and so, but you're not that so and so and that
Yeah.
so and so. So we have to prioritize them based on availability.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you probably wouldn't be surprised, Andrew, just how many phone calls I would get from service senior enlisted leaders saying, "Hey Ken, I can't get a damn airplane to take me here." So of course my next phone call is to Joe Sack and say, "Okay, explain to me so I can call them back and tell them why they can't get an
Yeah,
airplane or
yeah.
they can't get that airplane."
Right.
So
Yeah.
and 9 times out of 10 they were great about it. They understood, but it's it's
Yeah.
just it's the
Well,
services have become, and I think this is a good thing.
hmm.
You know, soldiers like soldiers, airmen like
Right.
airmen, Marines like Marines. But in this day and age, we have become a much more joint force.
Right.
And I think we've been able to leverage the greatness of all the services to kind of
Hmm.
rise the tide for everyone.
Right.
You
I would agree
know,
with that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, if I want to learn how to fire a weapon, I
Hmm.
had this. Give you a prime example. When I was in Afghanistan, I had a couple of Air Force guys, 4 of them, whose weapons qualification was going to expire because their deployment was extended.
Right.
And the Army Command Sergeant Major said, "Hey, man, send them over to me. I'll take them out. They can qualify out in the field with my dudes, and they'll be good to go." So I called back to the unit and I says, "Hey, we're not going to fly these guys all the way back to Germany to do a weapons course and then fly them all the way back to Afghanistan. It's stupid.
Yeah.
The Army Command Sergeant Major is going to qualify them and then we'll be good to go." Okay, dudes, all right, I'm ready to hang up. The guy on the other end is like, "No, you can't do that." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "No, Air Force guys can only be certified by Air Force combat arms guys." And I said, "Are you listening to yourself? If I want to learn how to fire a weapon, I'm going to tell you right now, if a Marine or a soldier was going to put me through a course, not that I don't love my Air Force, I love my Air Force,
Yeah.
but the folks that do it the most,
Yeah.
I'm going to, I would like to lean towards them and then
That
have
makes
these
sense.
guys go back and say, I am even more qualified because I had to do this, this, and this. They pushed back on me like you wouldn't believe. I had to wind up flying these guys back. But that was
No
just like
kidding.
that was one of those things that when the SEAC position came into play with guys like
Hmm.
Joe Gainey and Brian and others, that I would say this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I had a Marine, and Brian reminded me of this story about a week ago, so ago, when I told him I didn't think I'd be able to share anything interesting with you. Well, Brian says, "Hey, did you forget your conversation you had with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs?" And I said, "I forgot about that." But here I had a Marine
Yeah.
We have a group of Marines that are here at Scott Air Force Base.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a Marine who was having some issues and they needed to get some financial support.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have this thing in the Air Force called the Air Force Aid Society.
Right.
And of course, Navy or the Marine Corps has a Marine Corps Relief, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
Navy Marine Corps Relief.
yeah,
Yeah.
I could not get money from the Air Force Aid Society folks. They could write a freaking check right there in the building because the young man was a Marine and not an airman. And I said,
That is crazy.
I came home and I told my wife, I said, hey, I'm going to write a check, just letting you know that this is what's going to happen. And she said, okay, fine. And eventually we were able to get it figured out. And we got him a check, but it had to be FedEx from somewhere. And I said, how stupid is that?
Yeah.
The last thing this kid needs when they're in this challenge is having to put up with this crap that, well, no, that's not your pot of money. That's only our pot of money.
Right.
It's not about the pot of money. It's about helping the person that needs it.
Absolutely.
And I explained that to Admiral Mullen. And
Mm-hmm.
he had, now granted, not because it wasn't important to him, he had no idea that things
Oh
like
yeah.
that in the joint world were things that we can fix. We can,
Mm-hmm.
those are easy things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's a lot of common sense things within our service. Our service cultures have been made over hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
But every once in a while, it's nice to pull our curtain back and look into somebody else's backyard to see
Yeah.
if there's something we can learn from them.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think the joint force, the way it is developing now, is giving us that opportunity to do that.
Yeah. I would say one of the things that we everything is pushing toward the joint environment. As I was going through all the different schools for each rank and everything, they keep talking about joint environment and all this. Uh, but in the Marine Corps, if I'm going on a ship, my email service that I use in the Marine Corps does not match the email service that the Navy's using, and we work hand in hand with them all the time, and it still
Yes.
doesn't. I don't understand that whole process of why it is like that. It's just weird.
Well, back in, many years ago, that actually, those challenges with things like radios not communicating with different
Yeah.
services cost the lives of some people
Mm-hmm.
because, we had a couple of operations in the 70s. We tried to rescue hostages from Iran
Right.
where we had radios that you couldn't talk to the person that was, 200 yards away from you.
Right.
And it was all because, well, I'm a this and you're a that. No, when we have one radio, we can talk to all each other
Yeah.
again. Now, granted, with that, nobody wants to see the loss of life, accident, injury, illness, disease. Nobody likes that, and we shouldn't stand for it. But sometimes it takes events like that to teach us a lesson,
Mm.
so we don't go back
Yeah.
and do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember my dad saying, "You know what? You're going to make a lot of mistakes in life. You just never want to get bit by the same dog twice." You
Oh
know,
man, that's a good point. Yeah.
and to this day, I mean, I tell my children that all the time. Say, hey,
Yeah.
it's your call, it's your decision, but just don't get bit by the same dog twice.
Yeah.
And then when I
Yeah.
say it, my dad's close by, he'll like, yeah, I taught him something.
Yeah. Something went
So
through.
yeah, yeah, it
That's
was
pretty
good.
awesome. Man, that you've got some definite experience that not everybody has, and at least for me personally, I don't have the same type of experience, but and for a lot of the listeners that I have, I think they'll appreciate being able to hear your perspective and what you saw from your level. I think it's good.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I know that we've been on here a while, but I will, and to all your listeners, whether you served 4 years or 40 years, whether you are the family member of someone who served or the neighbor of someone, or you've heard stories about people who have served, we could never thank you enough. Because to be quite honest, it's because of all of you that guys like myself and Brian Battaglia and and Tom Smith and Mike Balch and I could list names forever. Uh,
Right.
we were it was an honor and a pleasure for us to serve.
Hmm.
It's a badge of honor that we did, but it didn't mean that we were any better than anyone else. It didn't
Right.
mean that that we look at ourselves differently than others. It's that, we ran to the sound of the guns because we didn't want the guns in your backyard.
Yeah.
We didn't want somebody harming you. There is nothing more important to me than my wife and kids. If somebody ever tried to hurt or, you know, injure or do anything to any one of my wife or children, I'd have no problem with giving my life to do that.
Right.
Well, the same thing when you're serving in the uniform, the nation is your family.
Hmm.
They are the ones you're willing to put your life on the line for because they're worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't matter what we've done in our lives. It doesn't matter if, we've all made mistakes. We've all made poor decisions. We've all done things that we wish we could go back and redo, but we can't. So, we focus forward. If we're going to fall forward. You can't drive your car and unhit a pothole. You can't unrun a stop sign.
Right.
Just try not to do it again. But to be able to have the honor of putting a uniform on for as long as I was, I owe the nation more than anybody ever owes me,
Yeah.
just for the opportunity to do that. So
I
you're good, man.
apologize. My
No
kids are
need.
running around. My yeah.
I, I
I live in a motorhome, and
uh,
so very close quarters, and it's cold
yeah,
outside, and I didn't want to go outside to record. So
I got you. But hey, I'm gonna. Normally there would be a dog in that recliner behind me, but I
yeah.
put him out because of the barking, or I'd have grandkids come running in here to say hello to G-Paw and jump up on me. So, but no, you know what? Here's the thing, Andrew. What we do is for those kids.
True. Yeah.
That's what we do, and
Hmm.
it, I have no issue at all with kids storming in, and I have no problem with screaming babies at sporting events. And you know what?
Oh yeah.
A screaming baby is a good thing. That means the kid's alive and doing
That's right.
well.
That's
So
right. That's a good
it's
point.
all good, man.
Well, hey, Ken, is there anything else that you want to kind of bring up or talk about? Maybe something we missed, or I always give everyone an opportunity at the end to do what I call words of wisdom. So you're more than welcome to do that as well.
I'll tell you what. I'll leave with this. Two real quick things. One, you're going to have some other guests that are folks that I have been associated with. Uh, Guys like Brian and guys like Mike Balch and guys like Tom Smith, Joe Gain, the list goes on forever. I could never thank those guys enough for taking the you know, young airmen under their wing and teaching me things that I did not know. Because I was by far the youngest guy. Uh, I was by far the youngest guy, and
Yeah,
they let me in. The other thing too is that don't always don't assign leadership or being a role model to rank or position.
hmm,
No matter where you are in your life, no matter what you do in your life, you can lead, you can inspire, you can motivate. If you're the person
absolutely.
that's taking out the trash every day, just do the best job you can at taking out the trash.
Hmm.
Because guess what? If nobody's there to take out the trash, nothing else happens.
It's a true statement.
So just thankful for the opportunity to be able to come on to your podcast and spend time with you and just thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for coming on. It's been a blast. Thank you for what you did. Taking care of not just airmen, but taking care of everybody. So I totally appreciate that.
That's all good,
Um,
brother.
well, with that, to all my listeners out there, If you're struggling, need help, anything like that, don't forget the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can always text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on the chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life loss is one too many. I care about you. I know Ken cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out to the buddies that you served with and give them a helping hand if they need it. All right, Ken, thank you. I appreciate it. To all the listeners,
Cool, brother.
stay motivated, change your socks.
Ton Tavern, birthplace of the Corps. We as Marines hold this history close to our hearts. Wouldn't it be spectacular if the establishment was born again? The Ton Legacy Foundation, a nonprofit 501c3, is taking the task and is looking to the Marines to once again save the day. Help the Lost Art podcast in raising funds to help get the Ton built once again only 100 yards from the original establishment in Philadelphia. We are looking for Marines to donate $25 representing the upcoming 250th birthday of the Corps. Spread the message and help establish the Ton, a place for Marine brethren to gather and remember our historic beginning. Go to the Lost Art GoFundMe page and donate today. The Ton Legacy Foundation, reestablishing our birthplace.